of the first official meeting of our Foundation for Inter-Wallet Operability block producers. I'm really excited to have you all on the call. As you know, my name is Luke Stokes. I'm the Managing Director for the actual foundation itself, Foundation for Inter-Wallet Operability. We are still in testnet mode, rapidly approaching mainnet launch, and this is a really exciting time. Thank you all for spending time to join us. We are going to cover a couple things as far as the roadmap and some critical issues. And the most of this call I want to have available just for open questions. I want to make sure everyone's really up to speed on the FIO protocol itself, the latest developments. We just launched the knowledge base, which used to be the roadmap and other things like that. We're trying to make sure you guys are all empowered to fully understand the protocol, answer any questions you have, anything like that. I see we get some others joining. Igor, Michael, welcome. And I'm just, again, very thankful for y'all to spend some time with us. My hope is that this kind of a call will become kind of a regular thing. And so we can have, if anyone has any questions or any concerns, we're always going to be, as the foundation is going to be available, and we can talk it through as a community. And, just especially leading up to mainnet launch. And we're going to be meeting as regular as we need to, because there's going to be restarts of the testnet as we test the Genesis file and all that kind of stuff. And just really appreciate your support as we do that, because none of this can happen without all of you. And obviously there's a lot of time, energy, resources, investment, and more that have gone into getting us up to this point. So there's a lot riding on this. And if we pull it off, this could be one of the coolest things that makes all of cryptocurrency easy to use for everybody. So I'm very excited about your participation. So yeah, again, we're just going to go over a couple things. Eric's going to go ahead and lead that. Eric is the VP of engineering at DAPX, and DAPX, again, there can be a little confusion sometimes between DAPX and FIO. DAPX is the VC funded company that started the first version of the FIO protocol. They were backed by Binance Labs and others. And the foundation was kind of birthed out of that protocol needing to be open source and kind of managed by the community. So that's kind of what I'm representing and got asked to lead that board. And that's Cayman nonprofit entity. Also, if we have time, Eric, it'd be kind of cool to introduce, I think, the DAPX team, some of our devs, and just make sure you guys are up to speed with who they are. They are going to be obviously your main contacts as things get crazy, as they always do in blockchain. They'll be the ones that we're going to be working with very closely, obviously, as foundation and a chain. So hopefully they'll get an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then after that, again, it's just going to be Q&A mostly, and cover any concerns or thoughts or questions we have. So I think that's it for me. If you want to take over, Eric.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, why don't we just start off with that? I do see a lot of the team on here. So again, it's Eric. I run the dev group. And I also see our dev team on here. You'll see Ed, Casey, and Adam and Todd as well. You've probably seen them in the channel as well, if those guys want to say hello.
Hey guys.
Yeah, and I also see Pavo, who's our Chief Product Officer, and then I also see, did I see David Gold on there as well? The boss there. So I'm going to have to change my slides now to remove all the dates that I was going to throw out. My tentative release dates. I better back those out now since he'll hold me to those. But so that's the team. Did I miss anyone else? I think that's there. Yeah. So, as always, if any of those guys are on the channel, feel free to reach out. Pretty much all of us will answer questions as we're on the Telegram channel. And if we can't answer them, we'll find who can. In terms of, first, I think the group so far has been great for us. Very patient with our updates. I know every time we have to restart that chain, it causes a bit of effort on everyone's part, but it's going to be happening a few times. Hopefully, as Luke said, I do have a slide I'll show that goes through the potential roadmap that we're looking at over the next few weeks. So give you a little heads up on some of those restarts as well. Most recent one we did was that 0.9 update. Hopefully that's a bit more stable. I know Bowden and then Todd internally, who does a lot of our SecOps, we're hitting that with some performance recently again, and this time there's no RAM explosion that we hit with the 0.8. That came actually, so we've been also getting some good support from our team at BlockTrade doing some security testing. So a lot going on with security testing, performance testing, as Luke mentioned as well. I have another slide on some of the critical issues that we have been looking at, really just a high level view of those, and we can dig into details if there are questions, but I'll start the conversation with that slide and we can look at those as well. In terms of giving feedback, I just wanted to mention that don't be afraid of stepping on toes with this team, or if you see issues you think we should be addressing, or you're worried about something, or some process could be improved, please feel free to throw that out there. We don't get offended too easily, and we'll take all the help we can get. And the amount of experience from this group is enormous. So we want to benefit from that. That's the whole purpose of this. So I just wanted to say that as well. All right. So actually, let me share my screen and then I'll throw a slide up here. 1 second. So hopefully everyone can see this. It's just a roadmap slide. Are we picking that up?
Yeah, looks good.
Good. Okay. So where are we? So we are in obviously the final stages. We've had testnet up for a few months now, and we are trying to get to mainnet for a variety of reasons. There's competition out there. There's funding. We only have, there's a certain amount of money that can get you across the finish line. We need some runway. There's other corresponding deadlines from other groups that we need to coordinate with as well. And we believe the software is ready. Like we are been working on that critical fix phase for several weeks now, fielding the ground balls as they come in. They were pretty heavy at first. We haven't done all the fixes on all the recommendations from, Bowden at Crypto Lions, and others have been looking at our code and given recommendations. Some we have to make the call on as being less critical than others. Doesn't mean they're not important and can't be done post mainnet, with the understanding of how difficult it is to do some of those post mainnet as well. But that's where we stand, I would say. But I don't want to discourage, again, any feedback on critical issues or things that would cause us to take a step back. We will definitely consider. We're doing that at the moment with one of the issues I'll show on the next slide as well, to button down a little bit with resource management. So we are willing to look at those when necessary, for sure. So looking at the roadmap here, again, in red, assuming no critical issues are discovered, everything goes smoothly. A very broad disclaimer there on my behalf. Let me just kind of start at the top here. Again, testing critical fixes is really where we are. We're not adding new features. We're not changing APIs on my front end team or doing anything like that. We'll be doing that up until the very bitter end, I'm sure, but we're trying to get to a good release candidate that's stable, that we don't have to make fixes to. I'll go through a little bit of what the release plans are, kind of the red items in a second here. Well, no, I'll go into that now. So this first internal Genesis test, so the Genesis testing is the next item on that. That's been a somewhat of a learning, what we have a lot of pre-sale addresses that we actually load up in our Genesis scripts, and we've done quite a bit of work to get our Genesis scripts in line. Recently, we've gotten a few folks looking at those Genesis scripts and giving us feedback on how to make them more robust in terms of when we're adding in addresses, or in our case, we're purchasing FIO addresses and FIO domains and doing all of that, how to do the error checking a little bit better. So we're actually taking a step back and gonna rework some of that into a JavaScript-centric code base as well. But that is doing a lot of testing. We have an internal test net where we can fire up, the usual 21 nodes and do some Genesis testing there. So when we talk about the internal Genesis test down in the lower left-hand corner, that's what that was. That happened last week. Again, we're in the process of redoing our scripts, so we're going to have to redo a lot of that, but that's fine. We were going to head towards what I'm calling the testnet Genesis test this week, but I pushed that to next week. This is where we want to get our current testnet was done with Bowden and Crypto Lions and our Genesis scripts, but it didn't have the accurate, and a lot of it just didn't get in there. The token locking, we have a lot of token locking logic in there. We don't have all of the accounts that were in we have a whole set of CSV files where we're loading accounts from. Those didn't all make it in there. So a lot of things didn't make it into this last 0.9 release that we do want to restart the testnet with as close as possible to what's going to be happening at mainnet launch.
I'm just going to add a little color to that as well.
Yeah,
I just want to give a really good shout out to Igor. He's helped us the last couple of days especially, and also Michael Yates, who's been involved. But of course, Bowden has been amazing as well from Crypto Lions. I just really appreciate you guys stepping in because again, we had something that our team was comfortable with, but we got some feedback about how it can be even improved, easier to validate, easier to, ensure the errors are caught and things of that nature. So I just really appreciate you guys jumping in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, USA Michael has been helping as well. So, yep, appreciate it. And again, any feedback, it's been great, and we're responding to that. So, and I'm sure we'll get more feedback as we go along there. So yeah, that's what that testnet Genesis test will be. So that'll probably require a restart next week. Between now and then, and I don't have that on this list, we actually have an 0.9.1, and we haven't done really a hot fix of contracts on the testnet. So we may use that as an opportunity, this 0.9.1, which has some good fixes in it, but I think the main purpose would be to just test that out with the testnet as well. So we'll keep posted of that one.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I know it's maybe it's kind of late, but there is any specific reason of keeping the FIO prefixed keys? Instead, I'm not talking about using EOS, instead using pub K1 directly, because it creates a lot of problems. People can't use EOS.js directly. There's a lot of issues. So I think it would be nicer to the ecosystem to avoid that and then remove the FIO prefix and don't. If you don't want to use the standard prefix, just create the accounts with pubk1, which is the new format.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion we should probably have, because I think we started before they introduced that pubk1 format as like being standard. So we've been kind of catching up to the latest EOS.io as we've gotten our functionality ready. We kind of then upgraded to the latest. I think we're up to, what's the latest version we've synced up with, Eric? Or maybe Apollo would know.
Because it's kind of like you have to use you can't use Clios in most of the cases if you want to handle the keys. You have to use the Clio, the other version, and you have to use a special EOS.js library. So imagine if a project has to work with both chains, they have to import two different versions of the EOS.js numeric library, just because they have to work with two different prefixed keys.
But we do also have
very bad for development. And I mean, this is just one of the things I noticed when working on the framework. So
yeah, and I think we're going to run into these problems and need to open up that discussion. I mean, point taken that we don't want to make things more difficult than they need to be. We actually branched off a FIO.js library a while back. Jimmy did that for us, so maybe that would help. And
yeah, but I honestly don't think you should worry about it. You should do a FIO library for FIO only actions and let developers use EOS.js alone, because it's way better to have a single library which is well maintained than having multiple libraries to do basically the same thing. So, for example, I ported myself. I wrote myself the code for converting the public key to the address name in native Node.js, because I didn't want it to import that library, because I don't know what changes were made. I want to have full control, and in comparison, I know everything that's going on in EOS.js. So I think this decision is important, and I mean it's simple to make the change, because if you want to generate the names the same way, you just convert the new key to the old key, cut the first characters and do the name conversion in the same way. So basically nothing changes. You just need to remove some parts.
The prefix, yeah. Okay. I mean, let's send that over.
It's just a recommendation, because changing this after wouldn't be very easy, I think.
Right. No, that would definitely be.
Yeah, thank you, Igor. That's good feedback. It's actually, I remember about a year ago as a consultant when I first got involved in the project, that sounded very similar to some of the things I was saying of like, let's try to keep things as much EOS.io natural as possible. And at the time, it was kind of, we were working with
Yeah.
OCI and others who were kind of like, oh, this is pretty much a brand new chain. It should be thought of that way. And then it's just been a lot of evolution over the last year or so. And I think more recently, as we've started to more integrate with existing EOSIO technology tools and realizing, hey, if we don't change a whole lot of this, we get some of this. But there are some significant differences with the FIO chain that do make some of the kind of out of the box libraries and tooling they just won't ever work for certain reasons. But I think that's really good feedback, and definitely one that we're gonna, that's the exact type of feedback we're looking for. Thank you so much. We'll definitely bring that back to the team and discuss it. There's also obviously the concern of, any changes at this point will most definitely delay mainnet, which is a pretty serious thing that we'll have to think through for many reasons, but we'll definitely consider it.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Igor. Thanks, Luke. Okay, so I think I was just going down the list here. So yeah, Genesis testing, you were helping us a ton with that, as others are. We'll continue to do that testing, the 0.9.1 hotfix, and then the possible testnet Genesis test next week. Obviously onboarding, I mean, several of you have, and probably most of this group has gotten up and running on testnet. We actually have quite a few additional, you all signed that source code access agreement, quite a few others. I think we've had 9 maybe that have, of you that have gotten up and actual running, producing blocks on testnet. Probably have another 13 that I'm, in some state of onboarding as well, some earlier and some further along than others. So the goal over the next few weeks for sure is to get everyone in the loop so they can get on the testnet for when we do these changes and ask those questions, because a lot of the same problems get hit by a lot of the new VPs as well. So, and anything we can do to improve that process, we'd just send that feedback as well. I know there's a few items that have come up. The next piece there is the internal bug bounty. So as part of our security testing, and again, I'd like to open this one. This is a question really for the group here. We do want to do bug bounties when we go and make our repo public. So when we go to open source, but that is not until after mainnet activation. And maybe I should just, when I talk about mainnet launch and mainnet activation, it's just some semantics we've come up with internally, where the mainnet launch will really be that ABP launch is what we're calling that. And then the activation is when we hit consensus with the VPs. So when you see those 2 items, that's loosely what we're talking about. The 2-week period here may or may not be a little aggressive on getting from the actual startup, the Genesis startup, to the activation, but we'll see.
So just to be clear, the activation is the same step as with the EOSIO when 10% voted. We actually modified that threshold to be 65 million. So when 65 million of FIO tokens have voted, then that basically activates the chain and basically makes the schedules of VPs.
Awesome. Thanks, Pablo. So the internal bug bounty, as part of this, we do want to have a bug bounty, but we've also discussed how to improve just opening this up early to, I mean, it'd be a little more difficult because really this would be available to people that have access to the code. I guess it could be through the API as well, which is available publicly, the testnet API, just the FIO repo itself is still private and only accessible to the people that have signed that agreement. So the idea is I could create an internal bug bounty, or we could create an internal bug bounty that I don't know if anyone in this group would be interested in trying to hack into our code and earn some money or some FIO to do that. But if that's a good or bad idea or may not get that much response, I'd like to hear feedback on that one. Any thoughts on the ability to, or the willingness to participate in an internal bug bounty with this group? Is that probably not going to happen?
Anyone want to get paid to break stuff?
Anyone want to get paid?
Oh, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, there you go. That'll get you.
Maybe there's some. I think it's worth rolling out. At least we could get feedback on what that might look like. And once we open it up, it'll be in place regardless. And
Yeah, I
then
mean, just kind of our combined experience in software. It's like some of the best. I mean, with Foxcar for 10 years, PCI 1 compliant, we had to deal with, over $1 billion of transactions through our system. And it was like our bug bounty system over the years was the best. I mean, we had amazing people would do incredible things for, 50 or $100. It blew my mind sometimes. They would give me 2 days of, documentation of what they did to find some really obscure thing. And so obviously our hope is that by the time we're ready to mainnet launch this, and even after mainnet launch, we've got a high incentive for those who want to really pick this apart and find some issues that we can resolve those issues prior to it actually impacting any of the users on the chain.
Yep. And then the last item on the list here is we have a lot of things going in the background where you've probably been seeing some posts to the group as well. We're still trying to set up the history node with some support. I think Graymaster has been supporting us, and others have had suggestions or thoughts on how to get to a good history node approach for our wallets. We'll need that for our wallets to get transaction history, but in general, we'll need that for a block explorer. We still are working on that in the background as well. All high priorities, just haven't been as high priority as getting the blockchain locked down for a mainnet release. We're still on ongoing security and monitoring and different planning. So that's about what I have for the roadmap. Again, this mainnet launch currently targeted for mid-March in there, and then probably however many weeks it takes to get to the mainnet activation piece after that is their current roadmap, barring critical issues coming in the door. Any comments on that or thoughts? Or
We'll be offering Hyperion. I mean, I know Aaron has the V1 Magic Sweet Sauce, but we'll have Hyperion whenever y'all give me the green light to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic. I think maybe Igor, you could comment on that. I think the last we heard, you were working on some updates to that and wanted to get the latest version going.
Yeah, I mean, the update is not depending on anything on FIO anymore. It's fully compatible. It depends on the tests of the update itself for us to release it publicly. And as far as I tested with FIO, it's working okay because state history already gives us the keys in the new format. So it makes any difference for Hyperion. But for example, if we wanted to add compatibility on Simplus on our wallet, we wouldn't be able to add at this point because of the keys. It would have to be a patch, because usually we have a dynamic list of chains that we just update, and then a new chain is included with everything that's needed. But for FIO, it's not that simple because of the keys. Then we need to patch some of the base libraries that we wouldn't want to patch at this point. So this is one of the reasons for the change in the key. I think like a lot of wallets might not want to integrate because they simply have to change some basic stuff that it's usually they don't want to touch. But yeah, okay. I think with this schedule, we should be able to have our node running on the newer Hyperion on date for mainnet.
Todd, you've been
Excellent.
working on that from our side. Do you have where do we stand with our piece on getting that up and running?
What you mean? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was asking Todd.
Okay.
Yeah, on our side, I know he's been the one that's been trying to pull it in and get a server up and.
Yeah, I wouldn't really recommend worrying about with this version because
okay.
You actually won't be able to run FIO with the version that's public. It's not compatible.
Okay. So you're saying you'll fire up a node? That's something that's getting worked on now. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I have already patched on the development. We have a private development branch that we work on. Because if I put anything public, people will just start downloading and testing, and then becomes a mass support. Hey, Michael, you know how it goes. but like so I already tested a FIO compatibility with the new version. It's fine, and I need to fix other things related to the release. But that's why I don't recommend trying to run on the public version, because you will encounter ABI deserialization issues, action deserialization issues on some of the accounts. And
is it enough not to run it? I mean, I'll be happy. I've got the infrastructure.
No,
I
I think if you try to run it, will break. It won't work.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. I think you can't run, because it will start indexing something, but you get a lot of the chain, a lot of issues with. I don't remember. Some of the system contracts are different, and then for example, EOSIO token is FIO token, and this is not a variable that you can change in the public version. The new version, you can set up a system alias. So it starts to get a lot of things that it's wouldn't just work well. So you get like a very basic history working, but it will be missing a lot of actions.
Now, Todd, you're working on the gray mass API, or the gray mass history API as well, right? The one you were playing with, the version 1 API that you were going to get set up.
Yeah. So I just started working on that. I mean, I pretty much got it running, and it's about as far as I went, and then plugged in a couple of different, Explorer front ends. Obviously, renamed contracts and stuff were a problem. So I threw together a little rewriting proxy to just, rewrite requests for EOS token to FIO token and that kind of thing. So to get it to work, but that's kind of a dirty hack. Yeah, I don't know what next steps are. I know I had a couple outstanding questions on, why certain things didn't work that I need to work through with our team. And that's about where I am. It's pretty early in the process.
All right, and then you got me thinking as well. We are kind of still in the process of exploring different Block Explorer options. We've talked to Blocks. They're pretty busy, but they are interested in participating after they're done with the current project they're working on. I've reached out to EOS Authority. I haven't heard back from them yet. If you have some contacts there and you'd like to kind of help with that conversation, that would be much appreciated. I know both Blocks and Authority have that local mode, and so we have been playing around with it already a little bit using the Gray Mass API. So it's been good to see that kind of up and functioning, but obviously we'd like to have something pretty solid by mainnet launch if possible.
Oh, and by the way, the new Hyperion comes with an integrated Explorer that you just launch with the URL of the provider /explore. It's supposed to be the fastest way possible to get information to an account, but it's not.
That sounds great.
It's not to replace any Explorer. It's for the other Explorers to use that API instead of fetching data from a lot of different APIs at once.
Very cool.
And it's a good way to test a specific Hyperion node for data in a user-friendly way. So we are also publishing that at the same time.
All right. Well, I'll just keep going then. So the next slide I had here, just overview of the main, because some of the feedbacks come from the BP channel as well as others on our overall approach. So, I mean, most of you are familiar, and so I'm not digging into kind of the guts of FIO, but as you know, we are a fee-based protocol. And so we are built on EOSIO, and so there's always been some concerns about how we manage or don't manage resources within our chain. And so those top two items there really have been some of the main focuses over the last 4 to 6 weeks here, or even a little bit longer. I mean, ongoing discussions for a long time with the team, but really kind of a re-energized focus on figuring out if there are potential holes in our blockchain that could result in RAM attacks or possibly bloating the transaction log with, you know, nefarious VPs or nefarious just users in general. Just so that's what we've been looking at. So this top one, RAM state attacks, has the most recent history of updates here that aren't necessary, that are not in 0.9 and that we are working on right now. So obviously the problem would be is if someone, and I think BlockTrades was able to create a hack that was able to bloat the RAM at one point, and it brought down a few nodes. And so that's the thing we're trying to prevent, right? So you can plug all the holes you want. So we've done a few things like, if you go to that third column on the right there, we've done some monitoring of resources on a per action level. But the idea being is if at its core, if you're giving users unlimited resources and trying to plug holes on contract actions, because we can lock down contract actions, there's always the unknowns. And so what we've been discussing most recently is, and what we are in the process of implementing, I should say implementing probably right here instead of implemented, is general RAM. What we're creating is a RAM limit. We are reintroducing that limit for accounts, having a base limit, and then we will be increasing it. Again, there's kind of two levels. So we'll be increasing it as FIO fees are paid. What's important is we're going to have probably short-term security fixes for RAM, and then more longer-term solutions for that as well. So that is the one piece. I don't know, Luke, do you want to expand on that, or Pavo?
Yeah, I'll expand a little bit on it. This is one of the things that kind of, even the earliest days when I was getting involved and we started bringing in some consultants to kind of help and give some security overview of what we were doing, there was a portion of people that kind of just didn't quite get the fee model. And then I think there was also a portion of people that fully got that unlimited accounts is just not ever going to fly. Like no matter how much you try to secure, plug every single possible way that they might get past your fee-based structure, ultimately the base layer security model for EOSIO technology is that these accounts are limited, and they're limited by resource constraints. Those resource constraints typically go up based on how you stake, but that user experience of staking we clearly do not want to have in our blockchain. So we're exploring ways to adjust those resource requirements based on other things we do have in our blockchain, such as paying fees. So we had a great meeting even just this week. I actually just saw a PR that got pushed into dev earlier today. So a lot of this is being worked on right now, and I feel much more comfortable and confident and excited about the security surface that we're going to have with these changes in place. So, and I want to give a shout out to Gandalf and Bowden and BlockTrades and many others who have kind of chimed in on this and said, hey guys, this is potentially a problem here. And as as you guys saw, it did actually impact the testnet. We've known it's a problem. But now we've got a fix in place that I'm pretty happy about. And we're also exploring what we're going to do post mainnet launch. There's going to be additional improvements. When you have certain large transaction, legitimate users using the chain, there's going to be adjustments we'll have to make potentially as block producers. We might have multi-sigs, for example, to adjust certain resource limits. And these are the type of things that the foundation is going to be actively involved in, making recommendations on as we go forward and continue to improve the protocol as well.
Yep, thanks, Luke. And similarly with transaction log attacks, again, plugging holes with what extra fields, throwing large blobs of data in, making sure we're locking down our field sizes, things like that. Even if the transactions are rejected, things can still make it into that transaction log, making replay very difficult. So we had put in earlier, because we're not an open contract platform where anyone can deploy contracts, we can be very careful about what actions in what contracts are called. So Adam actually took the lead on, and Ed, and actually kind of the team took the lead on creating a whitelist of allowable actions that implement the field validation, right? So we actually locked down what actions are called. One of the things that caused that RAM attack was caused by the ability to be able to set, I believe, a contract with an action that was outside of our whitelist. So something like that would catch that. But again, there's this idea that we can't catch everything that Luke just talked about with CPU net as well as for RAM. So we are also instituting and it's a generous one, but a cap on CPU net for accounts. So in the 24-hour, cap. That should prevent some of the more egregious abuses. Obviously, if someone is trying to abuse that, we'll have to react accordingly as a group, but or as a BP group. But that at least puts, again, some level of meta security over the resource usage as well. And I don't know, Luke, you may not have. Do you want more on that, or are you good on that one? Yeah. Okay. Third one piece. So those are the two main ones we've been focused on, and I just don't know if I would like to open it up now, actually, if there are other similar type concerns, because this last one here is just monitoring response. What we find is that really a big piece of that is when these attacks do happen, we need a very clear response strategy. That means a technical response strategy. I would also say that also means a governance response strategy, i.e., what is the expectation for how will we communicate this to the block producers? How will the block producers, what is our expectation on how they might respond to attacks, different types of attacks, or different types of DDoS or RAM, state attacks, things like that, rogue block producer, whatever that might be. We want to clearly be transparent in how we are going to respond, or as a community and a group for that as well. I think that's important. So this is something that's in progress right now, and we'll definitely be reaching out to this group in particular for feedback on all of that. So more detail on that to come. But I would like to open it up as well. Like, I don't know if there are concerns, like I know that you have been at least using our software. It hasn't been bug-free by any means, but if there's kind of general issues, again, I don't think you can worry about stepping on toes or
it's not. I don't think is a issue actually. But why the reason for limiting for one action per transaction? Because it kind of creates a situation, because in a lot of scenarios, imagine that you want to pay two people, but you want to make sure the two of them will get the payment, and not one of them will get and the other will fail. So you create an atomic transaction with two actions that will roll back if one of them fails. So it's a pretty common use case to bundle things together to execute as one. So I just don't understand why you need to limit per one action, because you can still apply the fee model on all actions, right?
Adam, do you want to talk about it, or prefer I?
Yeah, there was some discussion earlier in the project in spec that would narrow down the amount of actions that you could perform within a single transaction. So we were kind of operating within that scope. We were kind of identifying some different problems that could arise from this, such as, if we can pack additional actions in there due to the limited scope and size that an action could have a cap at. What we did find was that yes, we could actually pack multiple actions within a single transaction, as long as that transaction size did not exceed a certain volume. Once the first transaction would succeed, the first action would succeed rather, any subsequent action would fail because it would exceed the transaction size limit. So there are some caveats to that. Now that we are approaching working on this replacement for the staking model for resource allocation based on fees, I'm not 100% set on if that's really the correct approach to taking to protect the chain. So I will kind of backtrack at my support for limiting the amount of actions within a transaction, and I don't think that's necessarily needed at this point.
Yeah, so I think the reason, to answer your question, I think the reason was that was one of the mitigation tactics that was deployed to limit potential attacks on the blockchain. Since we removed resource management, so we started to put a number of different protections in place, and that was just one of them. So it's basically limiting the transaction to one action, and then there's actually another related element where every action is actually sized, and there is a max size limit of that transaction. So if you exceed that, your transaction gets rejected as well. But as we are introducing this kind of resource management, perhaps that should replace the limits on action and transaction. Maybe that's a discussion item we should have.
That's correct, and it was my thinking that we would not need these legacy mitigation techniques once we have things like resource management in place. So we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, maybe one suggestion is at least make them dynamic for the block producers to be able to set at runtime with like set params actions, because currently I haven't looked completely. They are only in the contract, I think. They are not in the Node.js code, right? I hope so. So.
Okay.
You guys want to respond to that question? These limitations are only in the actual contracts. They're not in the Node.js core code. Yeah.
Yeah, the size limitations are in the contracts.
Okay.
There were some other layers of handling these excess actions in a transaction that we were exploring that we may not be approaching before mainnet, and that would be to actually charge an additional fee based for the amount of more RAM consumed in a transaction as needed. But this is currently not within scope.
Yeah, but not necessarily if you have a large transaction, it means that you're consuming more RAM. It just means that your payload is bigger because you want to include more, use more data in the processing. I recently hit the limit. I believe it was 256 bytes per transaction. That was the limit, and this is very low for some types of usage. I'm not well aware of everything that's like what people will use FIO for, but if it's just for like payment requests and that kind of things, okay, that might be fine. But again, if you want to bundle,
it's definitely something that can be built upon. We've had to put in these measures in a reactionary way to address security concerns, and the main goal right now is just to get the main net. And these enhancements that you're talking about, checking for multiple actions and being more dynamic, putting things into the config, allowing block producers to have more control over things, that can all be done. There's nothing to stop that. It's just the timeline that really impedes us from doing it right now.
Yeah, no, okay. I just wanted to know if the code is only in the contract layer or there's software modifications that are, if there's a hard fork required to change those things. Basically, that's the question.
Yeah, it's just in the
contract. I think it's not in the contract. I think it's on the Node.js code base. And if they're going to make a hard fork in the future, they can use the feature, activate the new feature from Node.js.
Yeah. But you check it, Matthias. It's on the code base. It's on the Node.js.
I think that if they are limiting the number of actions in a transaction, that information is not relied. I think that you can, but I think that they are doing it in the Node.js source code.
Okay.
There is that actually is correct. There is a maximum limit, transaction limit right now that I believe at one point was 2048 bytes. That's actually in the apply context. That is a part of the node. So to correct myself, yeah, there actually is this limit on the node layer and within the chain library, and there's additional per transaction limits within the actual contract actions themselves. So yeah, you did catch that one. There is that max transaction limit. I do think that got in there, but as a design choice, I think it is slated to be removed.
No, I understand that we're short on time, but what Igor mentioned is true, that in any case, if in the future you want to support more actions per transaction, you will have to put a new feature like a controlled hard fork in the Node.js.
Yeah, I think we'll take that design discussion offline, but I think we'll come around to address that at least within the foreseeable future. So.
Yeah, let's
excellent.
That one. Yeah.
All right, so I want to respect everyone's time. It looks like we got about 12 minutes left, and this is fantastic, guys. Thank you so very much for what we've already experienced. I'm hearing great questions asked. I'm hearing things get clarified. This is exactly what I was hoping this call would be and more. So I'm really, really thankful you all showed up. I know it's an hour out of your time. Some people early in the morning, some people late at night. Really, really appreciate it. And I just want to use the next 10 minutes to, again, cover any questions, any concerns, and it could be ranging far and wide from not just the core BP functions of the chain, but just even questions about the protocol. You know, what FIO is about. If you were to explain FIO to someone, you know, what would you say? Do you have any questions about that? You know, some people think it's a wallet, for example, and just explaining that it's a protocol, explaining, you know, the different 28 members and affiliates that are already on board to integrate with it. You know, any other questions related to anything? This is the time to talk about it. We got about 10 minutes and we're all here. So let's dive in. Curious who's the unshy one to ask the first question.
So I've been saying FIO, but it sounds like you say FIO. So we should probably standardize on that. I'm going to start saying FIO.
We probably should. It's funny because people still say EOS and EOS. And I always like, if it's OS, why is there not an A in there? But the funny thing is that FIO actually probably, I don't know, it sounds a little more accurate, but it was always said FIO to me. It's always been described as FIO. But yeah, let's totally get that right. You know, how about that? What do you guys think? So we can decide right now.
And I think David's got something to say about this one.
Yeah, David, you want to chime in?
It's been FIO for a long time, like in Fiona, the name, Fiona, and yeah, so it's, you know, we can make a song and have fun with it. You say FIO, I say FIO, you know, so somebody needs to come up with a song, do a little video, and it can be a great marketing thing. We'll have John from our team do that and make fun of it. But I think, you know, we've pretty much been saying FIO for a long time now, so probably stick with that. And there'll still be people who say FIO, and that is what it is.
All right, I'm going to go with FIO from now on.
You know, if you put FIO in most words as a starting, like Fiona, right? It usually is FIO versus FIO. I think that's why we started saying FIO.
I think the reason that the other side's going to happen is because all the nerds are thinking about IO. So you just kind of add an F in front of it and it becomes FIO.
Yeah, that'll be FIO, right?
Cool. Thanks for clarifying.
Any other questions or comments or things we can cover as we're all here as a group? Any questions for the team or me or anyone else?
When are these calls planning to be on a regular basis, Luke?
That's a great question, Wes. I think that's kind of up to us. You know, I don't want to take up a bunch of your time. I know a lot of us are very busy. We got a lot of different things we're doing. And, you know, a big call like this with a whole bunch of different people, you know, in a normal corporate environment would be very expensive. And I fully respect and appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys' time. We're all kind of taking, you know, various levels of risk, hoping that this is going to work out and we're going to be, you know, well benefited for it, for our time and our energy and efforts. So I think I'm going to leave that as an open question to you all. I'm willing to do it as often as you all benefit from it. So at this point, you know, especially leading up to mainnet launch, I'm happy to do them weekly and just obviously they're fully, you know, voluntary. You show up if you want or not. I'm happy to do it however you want. So, I mean, let's maybe take a straw poll. How do you all feel as far as the value of a call like this, to be able to connect with the team, get your question answered? I mean, obviously we're there in Telegram all the time. But, you know, if we need to coordinate launching of you know, the chain, a restart of the testnet, anything like that, what do you guys think?
Seems to make sense to have these more often leading up to launch and then kind of do them as a need basis post launch.
I don't know who is here during the EOSIO launch. I'm actually curious. Like, show of hands. Yeah, like you remember that craziness with the 200, on a Zoom call. Yeah. It was crazy, absolutely insane. So there are definitely aspects of that I loved and was absolutely amazing, and I'll never forget it for as long as I live. And then there's also aspects of that where I'm like, oh my gosh, I would never want to continue that. And it was interesting too. I thought after mainnet launch, it became kind of this like, hey, vote for us, we're important kind of a moment where everyone's like knowing that everyone is watching this great call, right? So I'm not as interested in that. I think we would probably keep the calls pretty directed to technical issues relating to block production. But of course, you know, voters are always looking for reason to figure out who to vote for. So that would probably happen as well. I think another related question would be kind of preferred modes of communication for security updates. Keybase has been used in the past for some EOS-IO chains. Definitely Telegram has been used in the past. I kind of like the idea that, ad hoc Telegram channels are created as needed for who the top VPs are in that moment. If there's a high security issue that needs to be addressed immediately, I'm open to feedback on that as well. Kind of sounds like Telegram's kind of becoming the place the EOS-IO community hangs out. So that's my current thinking if we had to deal with immediate issues in the mainnet, but open to any other feedback and thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think Telegram works just fine.
Telegram's fine. Yeah, the thing I like about Keybase is storing files that's important for that team. This is way better than having like a private GitHub or something.
Definitely. And if we get to the point where, because we've discussed whether or not we're going to build or have to build a WireGuard infrastructure, that is still kind of an open discussion. I've talked a little bit with Michael Yates about it. And so, those are the kind of things we'll discuss. And I agree, if we had to, have all those different IP pairings, all that kind of stuff, pretty semi-sensitive information that you'd want to keep, your WireGuard public keys so people can connect to you and all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff I think Keybase does very well for.
Yeah, we ended up going with Keybase as a recommendation for Wax because the Wax Guilds channel's public. So if FIO has like a public VP channel, it's kind of good to also have a side channel that's more operational and where everyone's identity is sort of vetted before they get in. And that was kind of the philosophy there. But whether or not that channel's in Telegram, Keybase, I don't really mind myself.
Also less noise, right? Because if I get a message on Keybase, it's probably faster for me to react to that than on Telegram.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that's good feedback. It's probably, I think, for even just that reason alone, it's probably worth setting up. Eric, maybe that's something we could add to our list.
Yeah.
Just so we have it ready to go and we onboard people, long before mainnet launch, just so the people that we believe are going to be our mainnet producers, have access. And if something did come up and we had to share, like for example, a patch file, that's an often example where you got to share something that you need to be secure as you can deploy it. The new system contracts, things of that nature. Get them out there, get them tested, get them shared, and then get them deployed. And then obviously, then you can have the announcement of, hey, we just fixed this thing that if you knew about, you could have hacked us pretty bad, right? That kind of stuff. So excellent. Any other questions in our last couple minutes? Again, I just can't thank you all enough. This is so encouraging to see you all here, spending your time with us. It's really exciting stuff. Any other questions in our last couple minutes? And again, I just appreciate everyone's time. I think maybe I'll ask a question of all of you. Is there anyone here who maybe doesn't feel comfortable or confident explaining what FIO is to someone? If that's the case, by all means, definitely feel free to reach out to me, and we could talk through some more. Just the knowledge base that Pablo just put up live. I think, are we promoting that now, Pablo? I know there's still some edits that need to be done, but there's a great knowledge base that used to be the roadmap, a PDF. Now it's a full website that you can go through.
Yeah, it's up there. Obviously, it's going to get lots of updates. It continues to evolve, but it's already out there live, so you can go to it, kb.fioprotocol.io.
Excellent. Yep, kb.fioprotocol.io. And we've got our explainer video. We've got a new demo video that we did not too long ago, working on an updated explainer video. So we want to make sure you all have the resources you need in order to talk about the project you're in. And I would definitely encourage you all to talk about it. This is the moment where you can actually be pretty helpful to the whole community of FIO and what we're doing by saying, hey, yeah, we're really proud to have been running the testnet. We would gladly retweet, your messages, all of those things. Definitely tag us at Join FIO on Twitter and all the other places where you're sharing social. And we are still definitely actively looking for block producers. That's, as that timeline demonstrated, that's kind of an ongoing process. And so if you, I know Rob and others have mentioned some people, and so definitely keep those conversations going. And of course, projects. Wes was telling me just a little bit ago about his team and how they're looking at some really great projects. People are excited about integrating with FIO. So that includes really any crypto-enabled endpoint, any wallet, any exchange, any game, any platform where you users have to deal with public addresses. we feel we provide a great opportunity to make that entire process easier. So by all means, reach out, let people know you're working with us as part of our testnet team, and we're happy to have those conversations as well. So if there's not anything else,
Hey, Luke, I was just going to say, if there's interest too, maybe we could, once we get a wallet up and running with the demo against testnet, if this group's interested, we could post that out and get them. We could all start doing FIO requests to everyone, and for FIO off the testnet. So
yeah,
that would be great. Yeah,
definitely do that. Let's get it out there. And I apologize, I did have to mute a couple times. So if you've covered this, let me know. Did you guys briefly just cover the early economics for the BPs, the reserves and the impact of FIO address giveaways on token fees for BPs during the early days, so that everybody
understands? No, actually, yeah, if you guys don't mind us going a little bit later, that's probably definitely in your best interest to know about. Yeah, do you want to go through that, David, or do you want me to do it?
I can quickly cover it. That's fine.
Yeah,
if you
go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
So, it's really quick, and obviously the knowledge base, I think, covers this in a little bit more detail, but important to understand in the early days of, how are you going to get paid and why are you going to get tokens? Because obviously on day one, at the minute that it launches, there might not instantly be, a ton of people registering FIO addresses, although we expect that to happen pretty quickly. So two things. One is the protocol itself has code in it that ensures that there's a minimum of 50,000 FIO tokens a day that go out to the BPs in aggregate. So to the extent that there isn't an aggregate enough tokens going out from all the other sources, then the protocol will mint tokens and make that up to a maximum amount of tokens. So there's a cap on that. So it does run out over time if that cap was ever hit. But we are hopeful and expect that that cap will actually never be hit and that those tokens will never all be minted. So that's number one. Number two is the foundation has a huge amount of tokens, 10% of the entire blockchain, 100 million tokens that will be in accounts that it can only use for the purpose of registering FIO addresses and domains. It cannot spend those funds, transfer those funds. It can only use them to register FIO addresses or domains. The purpose of that, a large share, 10% of the entire fully diluted tokens is...
It's actually 125, David.
Oh, thank you for correcting me, right? The latest math, because it's 150 total between the two. 125, excuse me, so 12.5% is for the foundation to give away FIO addresses to a large number of initial users to prime the pump. And so a lot of people early on are going to get free of FIO addresses on their wallets or their exchange's domain. Why is that important to BPs? Because the way that the tokens work for registration of FIO addresses and FIO domains is those tokens actually sit on the FIO blockchain and they're paid out daily pro rata, so 1/365th per day over a year. So that giveaway of tokens is going to create this huge backlog of FIO tokens sitting on the chain waiting to be paid out to BPs. And that is going to also then create great economic upside for the BPs who get involved early. So a number of mechanisms to help ensure that the early BPs are getting paid and hopefully getting paid well versus having to wait 6, 12, 18 months for things to really, ramp up.
Yeah, that's great. And again, the idea being too, as more and more tokens are sitting there kind of available and visible for people to see, man, if you're a great block producer, you have these tokens waiting for you. There isn't a concern that if you get elected, you're going to get paid based on activity in a fee-based model. So I really like that model that David came up with. I think it's going to serve the VPs well and create a lot of incentive for people to really be excellent block producers. And one of the things we're going to be evolving over time, as you probably know, I've worked with EO Stack, very passionate about DAX and DAO technology, is running the foundation as a DAC, a decentralized autonomous consortium. And so there's going to be an entity that is actually participating and helping provide guidance to the protocol, saying, hey, these are improvements we recommend. These are different governance decisions we'd like to implement and discuss with the block producers. So we're hoping to be an entity that, that EOS mainnet doesn't really have right now, as an example. And so I think that's also going to be really helpful to the community, kind of to bring us all together in a way that benefits everybody. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm sure there's.
I had one quick question. Yeah. I'm sorry if this is covered, but is the code that's currently under NEA going to be open and available publicly at the launch, or is there a certain timeline for that?
Yes, in that graph that Eric showed earlier, there's the ABP launch of the chain, and then there's the sufficient decentralization, the activation point. And so the actual agreement between DAPX, just getting into some of the details, is the code is, IP is owned by the foundation at this point. It became a nonprofit. All that money they invested into this IP is now owned by the nonprofit. But in that agreement, the nonprofit is not going to open source that code until sufficient decentralization, and that's to protect the supporters who enabled us to get this far with the protocol. So that's kind of the plan, and that is kind of a mutual agreement basically between the board and DAPX. And so that's the goal, especially to have this fully open source. Now, one of the challenges with that, related to that, is just from a security perspective. Obviously, we want as many people looking at the code and eyes on the code as possible. And when we have this kind of closed source lead up to this moment, there's some concern there as well. And so Eric and I have been discussing this. We definitely would love to continue the conversation in Telegram as to the benefits of keeping it closed source for a period of time, as we really are completely confident in the security of the code. But my hope is we're going to open source it as soon as possible, with an understanding that it has been fully, completely tested, and the community is very confident with the security of the code at that point.
Thanks, that's helpful.
All right, I think that's pretty much it. So we went a few minutes over, but again, I thank you guys so very much. I'm really excited about this call. I think what we could do, Eric, is we just go ahead and schedule these. As I'm sure there'd be a worth updating stuff next week. So if we want to just throw something on the calendar, and those of you who can make it, this was done at night, my time. If we want to do an early morning one, if that's better for other time zones, definitely make suggestions in Telegram. And again, thank you all so much for showing up and spend time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for the valuable call.
Cheers.